Podcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi everyone, welcome to our webinar, What's New in Sage 100C 2018. We appreciate you taking the time out of your schedules to join us today. There are a couple reminders here before we get started. All attendees are in listen-only mode, so if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the question box and we will go through those at the end. I'd like to introduce our two presenters today. We have Jim Fuller and Alan Neergarth, both on our Sage team here at Velocio. So without further ado, Jim and Alan, I will turn it over to you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. How's everybody doing today? I'd like to take this time to thank you for coming. Thank you for listening and giving us a chance to introduce ourselves and our product to you once again. This time, it's the first time we're introducing ourselves as Velocio. And that's the new company from a new company name as a result of our joining forces with another company. Nothing's changed for our Sage customers, I want to assure you. We are here for you as we have been before, and we're looking forward to serving you in the future. Our motto is, what's your next? And I got our next. We are now Velocio. We'd like to help you find out what's next in your business. Some of the solutions that we offer, again, on top of the Sage things that you're familiar with, cloud infrastructure and transition, CRM, business consulting services, other ERP systems, business analytics, and productivity pieces. Some of you know we've done this. We've been through this in a couple of other seminars. Some of this may be a complete surprise. As you're looking at other areas to automate and improve your business, please keep us in mind for those as well. But we're here today, again, because of Sage 100, Sage 100C, and Sage 100 Cloud. And we're in the past, we have the same focus. Light manufacturing, distribution, not-for-profit, healthcare, pharmaceuticals and biotech, and really anywhere else that Sage is in place, we're able to service. So the title of this presentation was What's New in 2018, and there's quite a bit to cover from a couple of different angles that we want to look at. So, one of the things that Sage 100C is doing in 2018 is it's really trying to, become more than your core. So, you have your core operation, your on-premise accounting financial system. You also have some add-on modules that are available through Sage, and then we have further add-ons and further enhancements are available through cloud integration, which we're going to get into a little more in depth. But Sage 100, Sage 100C, and Sage 100 Cloud are really looking to leverage, cloud third-party applications to make your business better, make it more efficient, and that's what we want to try to help you with.
And I'll point out at this point that it's still an on-premise system. You still install the product on servers that you control. So we'll get into more into that here in a little bit during the presentation.
Yep. So with Sage 100 and Sage 100C version 2018, there's some enhancements that are built in that we're going to go through in a little bit of a demonstration here a little bit later. Mostly around cosmetics, some functionality on the warehouse side, some functionality on the payroll side and the job cost side, which again we'll get into as we go in the presentation. The modules that were overhauled, really completely redone for 2018 are the payroll module and the job cost module. Those are two modules that had lagged way behind in the framework. The screens weren't the same size, the data tables weren't the same format, they just were different than all the other modules. So if you're using those two particular things, you're kind of at a disadvantage until 2018, where it all comes back under the same format. They also, in 2018, through some partnerships with some third parties, greatly enhanced the barcode module. If you own barcode now, you're going to want to look at upgrading to 2018 because you get mobility for barcode, which really allows you to do a lot more built in. It does come with 5 client licenses, so you can do inventory, physical inventory, you can do counts, and you can do some things with shipping in there as well. And that's also included as part of barcode. So the mobility for barcode is something you definitely want to talk to us about. If you own the barcode module, or if you're thinking about adding barcode to your system, now's a great time to do that. Also, with 2018, Crystal Reports 2016 has been released. 2016 has a lot more features as far as form intercompatibility, ease of change of data fields, some compatibility improvements, so on and so forth. And again, we're not going to get into any real detail on these items, but just to make you aware that these are some of the changes that are there and some of the enhancements that have been put in place. And if you have questions, again, put them in the box, or you can contact us after to dig a little bit deeper into the areas that concern you the most. Job cost highlights. Alan, you want to cover this one?
Since I'll be doing the demo. Yeah, since I'll be doing the demo of job cost. With job cost, they brought the program itself up into the new framework. Those of you that have been with the product for a long time know that they've been gradually moving modules, starting with general ledger, and AR, AP, more recently purchase order, but they finally got around to doing a payroll, but also job cost. So I'll be doing a demo of job cost in a little while, and you'll see that these are under the hood changes. They haven't really changed a lot of the look and feel of the module itself yet, but it does open the door for that. But the big is everybody that's used the job cost module, which there are a couple in attending today, they know that it's got a period-to-date, year-to-date structure. Now that has been changed to meet up with the other modules, so you are keeping your periods and years in separate buckets, and you can do reporting on periods and years and not just combined data. So it's going to be real helpful for reports. The period end now follows the same rules as the other modules. You can now do a job status summary by period and year. It's not just for it's not just in collective buckets, if you will. Same thing with cost code summaries. So the data file structure is more logical, easier to grab for custom reports, and the table names. If you have to do any custom reports, you can identify them with Crystal or Sage Intelligence and know what you're pulling. And they've added, like some of the other modules, they've added a grid structure for data entry and calculator buttons on those fields where it may apply. So let's go next. So continuing with what's new in job cost, the standard reports are now all Crystal. So I think any of you that have used the job cost and tried to make some changes to the reports like you do in the other modules, you can't really do that. They're hard coded. So now we have access to the standard reports to tweak them just like we do with all the other modules. And as I mentioned before, the going to the framework, it lays the foundation for future updates, including what will be an updated TimeCard module. So I want to point out that if you're using payroll and job cost today with TimeCard, you're not going to be able to upgrade to 2018 just yet, because they are in the process of rewriting the TimeCard module to bring it into the modern framework as well. So just have to sit tight for that a little bit, but I think it'll be worth the wait. Let's go to the next slide. And accounts payable, the picture kind of describes it here. It might be a little bit small, but really the biggest thing, and they keep updating the 1099, and so they've changed the functionality of the minimum amounts. Instead of just one bucket for anything over $600, you can now go year-to-date payments over the individual boxes that you're collecting and storing payments in. So that's really kind of the biggest change in accounts payable, to be honest. Let's go to the next.
Okay, from here we're going to look at some demonstrations, just light demonstrations, short demonstrations, some of the changes that were made, some of the improvements. And we're going to start off with just the global look and feel of the product. Many of the people on the call have upgraded to 2017. If you haven't, this is the new standard screen for Sage. There is also the ability to revert to the classic view, and the classic view is virtually indistinguishable from what you're used to using. The main advantage of going to this standard view is, well, there's several, but one of them is just a little more screen real estate here. You can do a little more with it. There is an easy to use favorites area to drag your favorite functions over to. The modules are listed the same way they were before. The main difference is instead of the individual pieces of the module dropping down underneath, they drop over into this next column. So you actually can see a little more. And the main reason they did that is because there's so many choices now. And so many things you can do with reports and Explorer, and it's just getting to be too much to have in one column. So at first I didn't like it, but then I did. So, and I think a lot of people are having the same experience. Between after the modules and the favorites, there's an area for web content, which is kind of just like what we had before. When you weren't displaying anything over here to the right, you would have your web pages. The difference is now it's easy to add new resources. It's easy to tab. If you're looking at something, you want to take it outside, you can actually open it in a new window. Just a lot of different options to really kind of work within Sage and actually do a lot more outside of Sage. Also with the favorites area, you can drop in external programs, Excel sheets, Word documents, PDFs, things that you want to manipulate on a regular basis can be dropped in here, which, you had that functionality before, but this is a lot easier to tailor to the individual user now because you can put it all in one section very easily. So if you have people that just do 2 or 3 tasks, they don't have to look at all this stuff. They can just look at their favorites key and stay focused. There's also a spell check feature built in now, and I did not set the demo up for that. I apologize, but it works just like spell check in Microsoft or any other product. If you misspell a word, it'll underline it and let you correct it. Have the same ability to add words that you use that are commonly misspelled into your data dictionary, so it lets you ignore them and make those corrections. Very helpful, especially when you're using customer-facing documents like statements and notes and invoices. So
Jim, if you don't mind, I'll add a couple of comments to that. So
Sure.
where spell checking is now active, it's active in memos if you're using memos and you go to type in some notes or comments about memos, messages that prints on forms such as invoices, statement, and checks, Paperless Office, electronic delivery windows, comments. So if you're typing in comments on like orders or invoices, it'll do a spell check for the comments along there. Notes in customer contact maintenance and vendor contact maintenance, email notification maintenance, and even if you do a broadcast message from the master console, it'll help check your spelling there, right? And it's set up. The global changes are set up under preferences when you configure your system, and there's a little checkbox now to activate the spell checker. And I do want to point out that some of the things that we're talking about, and spell checking is one, that there are certain features that aren't that you'll have available if you have Sage 100C or what's Sage 100 Cloud, but they won't show up if you just have the Sage 100 Perpetual license. And we'll be getting into more about the differences between those two. But part of Sage's direction, there are some slight differences between those users on the Perpetual, just Sage 100, versus the Sage 100C, and our license is the Sage 100C license, so that's what we're seeing here. Okay, Jim, I'll throw it back to you.
Okay, the next thing that we were going to talk a little bit about was the payroll module, and we've had some dedicated conversations with our payroll clients. But just for the people that aren't currently on payroll or that need a quick run through, we can look at payroll a little bit. The main differences and advantages with payroll at this point.
And we've got a demo company for PR2, right? For payroll.
Right. Yeah, it's a good call. Time to switch companies.
Teamwork, buddy. Teamwork.
Yeah, that's why I'm here. That's why you're here. All right, I'll switch it over. So now we actually have data when I look in here. I'll make it a little bit easier. So the main advantages to moving to the 2018 for the payroll module it's a web-based system at this point. So the payroll is still, the module is still installed locally, but the taxes and your tax calculations and all of your functions that you used to have to manually update are now automatic because they're coming down from the cloud. So you're essentially using a subscription service. When there's a tax update, it goes out and snags that update. It's like a Windows update or an Adobe update. You get a little window, they'll say, hey, there's an update, do you want to apply it? You click yes, everybody's happy. Keeps all the taxes from all the localities all the way up to the federal government, in current in real time. So you don't have to worry about, halfway through the year there's an update, we missed it, Sage missed it, you missed it, and where to go. So all this stuff is now automated. The other big advantage, which many of you will really, really appreciate, is you can have more than one quarter open, which means you can go back and forth. You don't have to end a quarter before you can move into the next. And that really allows you to, takes a little bit of pressure off. And then at the end of the year, you don't have to go through that routine that we've gone through for years and years and years that we all hate, where you have to back up a company and use the information from one company to send your reports and run your payroll live in the other company. And oh my gosh, which one is live? Which one is a historical? And having data going back and forth. You don't need to do that anymore because you can have more than one period open at a time. So
Jim, I can hear the clapping. I can hear the clapping online right now.
Right. Yeah, that's the favorite part for the payroll people. So, and basically outside of that, there's some nice little differences and features, and I'll show you on the screen here that I can show you. Someday. There it goes. So the employee maintenance area is probably the easiest way to look at, what's been done. You'll notice that the actual function is the same, and we'll look at a sample payroll here in a second. But what's different, what's better, is the way they've split the tabs out, and they give you a lot more information, a lot more real estate. You can match up a lot more of the record keeping to what's coming through on W-4s and other federal forms. You've got more fields for contact information. If you look here, this is commonly stuff that's on a W-4 or a resume. Your veteran status, your race, your sort
Jim,
location.
Do you have the employee maintenance screen up, Jim? It's not. We're not seeing it on your primary window, I don't think.
Huh. Right. Thanks,
there
Coach.
We go.
All right, so the screen is fairly similar to what you've had before. There's just more information in here, like I was saying, for employee records and record keeping. You've got more information that would come off a resume or W-4 forms already built in. You have separate tabs now for benefits, and there's 3 that are built in that you can track. You can set your accrual stuff right up here in these screens, which is a lot less customization than there used to be. Taxes now, you can look right in here. You can see the pay defaults. A big advantage for many of our customers also is the ability to add more than 2 pay rates. You've got 9 pay rates now. So, a lot of our customers were not able to use Sage 100% because they had multiple pay rates, and we were able, we had to customize things to accommodate that, and now that's built in. So, if you have people running, that do different types of jobs on different times, or maybe they're seasonal, you can go up to 9 built-in pay rates, and it'll calculate based on those what you tell it to, which is nice. Earnings, real quick, quick shot. And if you notice here, we've got more than 1 quarter showing up. Because we can actually go back by year. You don't have any records for 2016, but you can go back as many years as you have history retained. You can go back and open up their payroll records. Same thing for deductions. Same thing for paychecks. So if you had checks in 2016, you'd be able to go back and look at them. Again, a lot better than digging through the system, having to open up a prior period and go through all the rigmarole you had to go through before. So
Or going
very
through
nice to have that.
or swapping over and going to different companies because you don't have the actual current paychecks on a screen like this. So this is a really big this is a big deal for all of our payroll users.
So yeah, I didn't want to spend a ton of time on that because I know not everybody is on payroll, but that was the most significant improvement that I saw personally in 2018, and I think that's probably shared by the payroll people that are on the call or not on the call. So from here, we'll go back to the demonstration, and we're going to look at doing job costs, and for that, I will be turning the control over to Alan.
And Lindsay, are you going to transfer to me?
Yep.
Thanks. Okay, let me know if you can see it.
You're good.
Okay, so you'll notice right off the bat that my screen doesn't look like Jim's, and I'm just taking advantage of some of the flexibility you have in Sage 100C to modify your screen look and feel and screen changes. So that's actually that was introduced in Sage 2016. That's when C was introduced. So I won't spend a lot of time on how we do that, but just suffice it to know that we can do that. Also on my modules section, I actually always wondered how come they weren't alphabetized, and so one of the things we can do is you can alphabetize any of these columns that you see. And so I like my modules alphabetized, but once I get into the module, like here in accounts payable, I'm just so used to the order of where these are, like vendor maintenance, vendor inquiry, that I've left those alone, right? And then I also particularly like the way they've handled the favorites. You've got a lot more room for favorites up here now. So favorites in the Sage 100 Classic look and feel, it's still called tasks. But in the 100C look and feel, they're now called favorites, and there's a lot more room for them, right? So one of the things we talked about of changes in the accounts payable really was only addressing the area of 1099s, because they made other changes in 16 and 17 that we're not going into. So they've changed the name of the function. It's no longer called e-filing. It's just Form 1099 tax reporting. And if I click on that, lets me know I have to have an internet account. And really the biggest thing in here is there's now you pick the 1099 calendar year, and then for each box, now I don't, once we start using and have data in here, every box that will have a deduction will have a listing in here, and you'll be able to put the minimum payments for selecting any of the individual boxes, not just $600 for everything like it is currently. So, I hate to sound a little bit anticlimactic, but if you look in the what's new functionality that comes with the system, and if anybody has any questions about what's been included in any of the modules up until this point, there's a customer upgrade guide on the resources, and by going into the customer upgrade guide, it'll give you an itemization of all of the individual modules and then all the features for the individual modules that have been added. In our case, accounts payable, accounts receivable, there really wasn't anything to add to accounts receivable unless you're doing commissions in accounts receivable and you are using the new payroll module. And if you are, they've added a functionality if you want to post commissions to payroll as payroll checks for a period starting date and a check date. They've added those fields that tie back to payroll. Before we get into job cost, I'm going to touch on inventory, because that's another area where they made some changes, and the main change wasn't having to do with warehouse maintenance. They've added a new status button in the warehouse maintenance that allows you to have 3 new status codes: active, inactive, and restricted. So if I were to go into inventory, and let's say I want to do a transaction, and let's create a new batch. Let's say I want to do an adjustment. Somebody came to me and lets me know that, we need to, adjust 3 items out of inventory. And if I click my warehouse, notice I get a pop-up that says, hey, this warehouse is set to restricted in the warehouse code maintenance and cannot be used. So let's say maybe you're doing a physical count on warehouse 3, or your Atlanta warehouse, and you don't want anybody doing transactions until you're done. So this is one way of accomplishing that. So what's done is if we go into a warehouse code maintenance and select a warehouse, in this case, warehouse number 1, which is our Peach warehouse, the warehouse status has been added. And you can see here there's active, inactive, or restricted. And if you go to restricted, it actually allows you to say, okay, well, if it's restricted, I can restrict it for maybe certain types of entry, but maybe not other types of entry. So, maybe I want to restrict it because I'm limiting the use of this warehouse, and I want to start, pulling, want to get rid of all my stock in it, but I don't want to ship anything new. So you could, this will come in handy, I believe. You can also have a restricted start and end dates if you flag it as restricted. And then you can also set up something as inactive, and that's for warehouses that are no longer in use. And if you flag it as inactive, you can't pick it to do a transaction. But there are some restrictions on when you can set a warehouse to inactive. If there's a record of inventory in the warehouse, or if it's used in data entry or maintenance records, they won't let you set it as inactive. So basically, before you can flag it as inactive, you got to make sure that you actually have no inventory in that warehouse for any of your items. And you could always do just a quick explore view for that warehouse and see if anything comes up positive on hand for inventory, and adjust that inventory out before you might try and flag it as inactive. And you also want to make sure you don't have any orders, like purchase orders or sales orders, that are trying to pull information from those warehouses. But once those conditions are set, you could flag it as inactive. And then what you can do in the help screen is when you do a lookup for warehouses, you can have it hide inactive warehouses so they don't even show up to be selected. So I know this doesn't help everybody that's created these warehouses that are now obsolete, that you can't get rid of because it's almost impossible to delete a warehouse. But at least you don't have to worry about doing physical counts or having to even show up and being accidentally selected and used when you don't want it to. So, but that as far as the IM changes, that's really what was listed on that. And then it does add a code in the reason code maintenance as restricted, as when you have a restricted warehouse. So with that being said, I'm going to switch companies to our EEC company, which is the demo job cost company. And what I'm going to show is probably going to be a little anticlimactic for some of our job cost users, because you can see the screen really looks the same, okay? As I mentioned, they brought the tables up into the new framework, but to this point, they haven't really changed the input or added additional fields to the job cost module yet. I think in the future, they have some enhancements planned for that. But so the main screen kind of looks the same. Now, what is different though is they've added the fiscal period and fiscal year buckets for all the data that's being tracked. So I think that's probably the biggest single thing is, if you want to go back in a job that was started last year and you want to see what the specific, charges were for 2019, right? For period 5, you can see that. So, without actually having to go run transaction detail reports to show me, well, okay, what were my transactions posted in May of 2019, and then manually add them up, or try and figure out how to export the data to Excel from one of those job cost reports, which is almost impossible. All right, so that's probably the biggest point I'm going to make on that is, on the data entry side and the look and feel. So I'll go ahead and cancel out of this. If we go into job posting entry, Notice they've added batch numbers if you want. So if you've got more, if you're doing transactions where they're being fed directly into the job cost module and not necessarily being fed from accounts payable or purchase orders or sales orders, then you can have batches enacted for that. And but you know, as the function hasn't changed, if I do a direct cost, do the next entry number, you know, credit account number, I'm just going to grab an account as my offset. So you notice the data entry they added the individual fields for the data entry in the grid structure. So they've brought that up to the new framework, and that's nice. So, you know, we now have more flexibility of, you know, of rearranging the order of the entry screens, and also if we want to add user-defined fields for these particular functions, they've made it more. They've actually made it a lot easier to do that. It follows the other programming conventions. So I'll go ahead and cancel out of that. So some other things, as I mentioned, all the reports are now crystal reports. So if I go, for example, the job transaction history detail, you notice the selection for the report hasn't really changed, but notice we now do have the functionality to go into the designer and edit that report with crystal reports. And so if any of you all are on the call that are currently using job cost, you know, we can help if you want to start, you know, tweaking some of these reports so that they maybe are more conducive to being exported to Excel once you run it. Let us know. Notice they've also kept the preview window open after, so all of the other functionality that's been, you know, that has been added for printing crystal reports has been added to these for the job cost module. Right.
Okay.
And then last but not least, on period end, you know, the job cost module and the payroll modules were pretty strict on period ends, and the timing of when you did that. Those have now been relaxed because, you know, with the job cost, it didn't keep the current buckets populated with year-to-date, you know, period-to-date, job-to-date, year-to-date information unless you did a period end, and we're pretty religious about that. Now, you know, the period end follows the conventions of the other programs. You know, you don't have to do a period end to go to, you know, if you forgot to do period end for 2 months, all your data is still going into the right period buckets, and that's pretty big. So I think that sums up the modules that we're going to touch on. I only want to mention one other thing, Jim, here real quick. This isn't a 2018 feature specifically, but this is just something that we run into recently. We did an upgrade with a client that is migrating over to the 100C subscription, and but they haven't had it posted on the customer's website yet, on the customer portal yet. So we were going into some of the setup functions, like for example in sales order, and I'm going to change companies here. Go to sales order, go to setup. Just an example, if y'all can see here on my screen where on my setup, I've got quotes set up, and it says use default order entry date when prompting for order and the default days until the quote expires. So let's say I want 30 days until the quote expires. You know, I just found out the other day in doing an upgrade, you know, when I was explaining how you could default days until quote expires, because that's one of the changes that was added, you know, I think with either 2016 or 2017, it wasn't available on the system. That's because it was still a perpetual license, and the license keys haven't been updated to the subscription license yet. So that's just an example of kind of where Sage is going with, you know, their licensing and how they're tying certain features and functions to that, and which is exactly where we're going to be going for the rest of our presentation. So with that, Lindsay, I'm going to have you throw it back to Jim.
Okay.
So Lindsay, are you still there?
Yep.
Okay.
There we go.
Great.
Okay. And with what Alan said, you know, this was kind of my reaction when they started talking about, you know, Sage 100 Cloud. Just some documentation, some information coming out via email and online that refers to Sage 100C as Sage 100 Cloud. And I was like, wait, what are they doing? You know, are we moving to the cloud? I hope they're not, because, you know, God help us if they are. We all want to have our premise in our control, and at least a lot of us do. I do. And you know, I didn't like you know, where I thought I was going, but fortunately I found out fairly quickly that's not what their intention was. So the differences between Sage 100, Sage 100C, and Sage 100 Cloud are pretty simple. Sage 100 is the perpetual license, and that's what you've had. You know, if you own the software and you're paying annual maintenance on the software that you own, you know, basically you have what you have. You own the version you have, and you're paying your maintenance to your upgrades. And they're not really adding any new features to Sage 100, but you know, they are going to upgrade your versions along with the other ones. Sage 100C is a subscription license, and that's really where, you know, the world wants us to go at this point. Whether it's Adobe or Microsoft or Apple or anybody else, everything's now going to subscription model. And you know, Sage is no different. Sage is really wanting to go to the subscription model. So, you know, they're enticing us with some deals. They're enticing us with some additional features that are only available in C, as Alan kind of alluded to. And that's what they're, you know, that's really where they want us to go. Now, the next step they've done is they've actually renamed this year Sage 100C to Sage 100 Cloud. And I was like, again, what are they doing? Well, it's the same product, different name. So it's still a subscription. It's still premise-based, but they're calling it C because C was supposed to say connected before. Now they want to say cloud connected, and now it's just cloud. So essentially, they're connecting Sage 100 to the cloud for a lot of the enhancements, for the payroll subscriptions, for some of the other things we're going to look at here that are their own enhancements and third-party enhancements. So again, you're going to see all kinds of references to Sage 100 Cloud. That's really, really not what they're trying to do at this point. They're not moving us to the cloud. I don't see any evidence they're going to be forcing us to go to the cloud in the near future. It's just a matter of how they decided to name it, for better or for worse. So we thought we would get on top of that and get in front of you and assure you that, you know, they're not doing anything crazy. So to explain further how this basically works is, you know, so you have your Sage, you have your database, whether it's Providex database or a SQL database on the back end of Sage, and that's where all your data is stored. You know, on top of that, you know, you've got your base modules, your premise-based, what you own, what's in-house, your GL, you know, accounts receivable, payable, all your basic modules are there. Even your payroll module still resides on your system, even though it's subscription based. Now, on top of that, you have your connected services. The connected services would be like your payroll subscription, AP management if you have anything like that. You know, your shipping system, your web interfaces. That'd be an example of cloud applications. And actually, beyond that, your actual web integrations, website integrations, your complete third-party shipping systems. You know, you're talking about your ISVs at this point. So, you know, you've got cloud applications that are connected to Sage in their cloud. You have your third-party desktop applications that are outside, and you know, that's how they're doing it. So they're basically saying Sage 100C builds on top of Sage 100, which is exactly what it's doing. And, you know, it's just adding different layers of where the information is stored. And again, so the way I'm looking at it is the Sage 100 Cloud is Sage 100C, which is connected. So I'm just, you know, I keep reminding myself of what this actually is so I can explain it properly, because it basically is still your premise-based system, and your enhancements are added on through the cloud. So, you know, nothing's really changed. I mean, Sage has always been cloud friendly and able to integrate with third-party applications and their own enhancements in the cloud. And of course, if you choose to use the cloud, you know, you can do that. There's several ways you can actually, you know, host your information in the cloud if you're in a position where you want to do that. You know, and if you're interested in doing something, that we can certainly talk to you about it. You know, there's there's pros and cons going each way depending on your unique situation. So that'd be an offline conversation for Alan or I or Jeremy.
So I'd like to point out at this point that so the solution that Sage is offering with 100 is really you'll hear this terminology is a hybrid cloud. And that means where you're combining your on-premise system, and that premise could be, as Jim mentioned, you're in a server in your back office, or it could be a server that's hosted on the cloud. But the main point is you control your data, and you control the applications and where the applications are installed, and when the applications get updated or changed, and what changes you want to make to your specific app, and the rest is operation as normal. So what's the next slide?
So the next slide is just a little more of that. I mean, basically, why go with Sage 100 Cloud? Well, it's still an excellent product. Having shopped around several times as a business owner, I still believe the value for what you get in Sage and what the capabilities are the best in the industry. There's just nothing out there that's even close as far as the capabilities for what you get at the price point we're at. So, I think that one of the reasons that they've done this cloud integration, this kind of opening up of the architecture a little bit, is because it's such a good fit, and there's so many verticals. There's so many ISVs that are building so many enhancements. The only way to do this was to set it up so it could be cloud connected, and that's what we've done. And there's several examples of that we're gonna talk about here as we move on. Some of the connected services. I know Alan's had some seminars on AP automation. I've done some things with Office 365. E-commerce. Sage 100C manufacturing, which used to be Job Ops, which they've renamed to Sage 100C Manufacturing, which I think is a good move. It's a little more explanatory as to what it does. The multi-bin's part of the barcode solution that's out there that allows you to use multiple locations for any one product in one warehouse or more warehouses. And then the budgeting and planning function is going to be expanded here shortly, and that's going to be something that's going to be connected to give you additional tools. So why are they doing that? Well, it's convenience and collaboration. So you've got convenience that you can access your information pretty much anywhere you need to on any device you want, and the ability to collaborate both with your peers, your coworkers, and the ISPs themselves to get the information you need. So, and that's where the entire world's going. We're just making everything work together. Some of the common things that are now cloud connected are, payroll. Payroll is now a subscription module, so it's connected to the cloud to get the updates that needs to be got. HRMS, which is I believe called Sage People now. That's another one that is connected basically, so you have an HR piece where you're onboarding, offboarding, all of your employee forms are managed there. It's a really robust piece of software that's available, that's again connected to Sage through the cloud. SIA is Sage Inventory Advisor. We have people that are using that and love it, and it's basically an inventory monitoring system that helps you optimize your inventory, and I'll get into a little bit of detail about that later, but it's also cloud connected. Mobility for barcode, again, cloud connected because you're pulling from multiple warehouses and locations, through your Wi-Fi, through your internet to the cloud, back into Sage. AP management, there's several vendors out there doing things with that, and Alan's had a couple of conversations with people on that topic, and a couple of different vendors we've offered on that topic. Connected shipping, very popular. Starship's a popular one. ShipGear, there's others out there, but again, that all has a web component to it for the shopping and for the actual processing of the shipments. And website integration. So website integration, we'll talk about a little bit more as we move on. Payroll, again, we talked about the automatic updates, automatic tax table updates, all that is, come through the cloud. Resource management system, which is now Sage People, basically allows you to manage your entire human resources throughout your organization through one cloud portal that reports back into Sage. The shipping and receiving automation, there's so many vendors out there now. These are some of the ones that work best with Sage, and we've done integrations with most of them. All of them have a web-based component because you're shopping your rates and you're doing your shipments actually across the web. Inventory Sage Inventory Advisor is it's a fantastic product for you guys that are tracking inventory. I love it. But basically, it's a cloud-based subscription. It basically looks at your inventory, your purchasing habits, and your sales seems to be, advises you when you need to buy things, advises you to identify trends, you can identify needs, and forecast your production and ultimately improve your profitability. Cloud-based solutions that we're offering at this point.
And it was one of the, it was actually.
You're not using it and you have inventory, definitely want to talk to us. Warehouse and production management, Sage 100C manufacturing, they've just kind of done an overhaul on that. I'm personally trying to get my arms around all the changes, but it's much more connected now than it used to be. There's a lot more to it, a lot more components that are functioning, and again, we're looking forward to working with our customers that are in manufacturing, light manufacturing environments, to look at the rationale behind maybe implementing some of that in some of these sites. One of the other things that's happened, and this is something that kind of goes back to the ISVs and the need to have cloud connectivity. Scanco, for example, is one of the independent vendors that now is kind of developing the barcode for Sage. So, they've acquired the Sage Mobility piece, and they're actually developing, for Sage through a connected environment, the barcode module. And it's kind of like we look at look at the government. The government, they're starting to realize that they can't do everything, and some things are better off to be subcontracted, and you'll have faster turnaround and better improvements in the open market. And that's kind of what's happened with the barcode module. And there's been so many changes and so many enhancements that, again, if you have barcode module now and you upgrade to 2018, you're going to see quite a bit in the way of improvement there. AP management, I know Alan's had a seminar on this. For those of you that don't know, there's several vendors out there, including Sage themselves, that offer management solutions for your accounts payable, and that can be anything from purchase order and setting up workflows, setting up approvals or automated payments. And there are solutions to do everything, and there's solutions where you can choose pieces of this. So maybe there's one pain point in your organization that you don't have a workflow. Well, there's companies that will set up the workflow for you. It's taking you forever to enter POs. There's places that enter the POs for you. So there's different pieces you can choose, and again, that's all cloud connected because you're communicating with another system that can enter things that will go back into Sage. That saves you a lot of time and money. On the accounts receivable, same thing. You've got companies out there, and actually banks that are out there that are offering services right now to handle your accounts receivable. So they'll look at your invoices and they'll do your collections, and they'll run your credit cards, and they'll deposit your payments, and basically take that completely off your plate. Again, through your connection to the internet. So again, a good example of cloud connection saving a lot of money and resources. And the most popular and what most people think about when they think about cloud connection is website integration, and there's a million ways to do that. And Sage will connect anything, and they always have. It's not always been well known, but there's always been backdoor ways to connect into Sage and integrate websites. Whether it's a custom solution or any of the popular shopping carts out there, we can tie into any of them. From the front end sales piece all the way to writing back your tracking, your invoice information, and your payment and credit card information back into Sage. So there's just a million ways to integrate websites and any other third-party sites you want to. Again, that's something we can talk about offline a little more in depth. And that's really about all I have as far as presentation for what this is. The main thing I wanted to do again was to get across the differences between the premise, the 100C, and the cloud system, and to show you what we can do with what we have. And please, to take a deeper dive into any of these things or have any, further questions answered or talk about some of these products, reach out to one of us. We're here for you. And, there's the entire Sage, front end of the Sage team is up there on there for us to talk to you.
Jim, can you proceed to the next slide for, I think there was a slide about Velocio, or just the who we are, I think. Was that still in your, in there?
Yeah, let me pull it real quick.
So I just want to touch on this. We mentioned at the beginning, but most everybody that I've talked to over the phone recently has got the email from us that we're now called Velocio. Some of you may not know that we now have over 300 people in our organization, and it's not only our organization, but we also are continuing to form strategic partnerships with companies that may be specialized for specific applications, where maybe it makes sense to work with a partner where, hey, that's what they do best. Let's work together and fill the needs for our clients. So there's a term that Jim had mentioned a few times during our presentation today. It's called ISV. That stands for Independent Software Vendor. And those are the companies that Jim was referring to that have been, providing all of these great add-on products that work with Sage. And we have formed as Velocio strategic partnerships with some of these ISVs, and now they're offering solutions not only for Sage, but the same solution also works with some of our Microsoft or maybe even NetSuite products. So what this means is that it allows us as Velocio to serve a pretty wide variety of customers, and we try and put the best resources, whether it's a Velocio employee or a strategic partner, in place. And I think there's another screen that maybe talks about some of the types of clients that we have in our database now. All right. So if there's any, were there any questions on anything that we discussed today?
There is nothing so far. Remember, you can put them in the question box on your little panel. If not, definitely, if you have questions, reach out to Alan, Lori, Jeremy, or Jim. We will get those answered for you. We will definitely stay on for another minute or so to see if any questions come through. But if not, thanks everyone for joining us.
Okay, and for those of you that are thinking about upgrading, and we went through today focused on what's in 2018. If you're coming from an earlier version, like say 2015 or even 4 or 5 or whatever, when we do our what's new, we also include what was added to the modules that you skipped, so that when you get ready to run in the new version, you at least have a feel for maybe some of the features that you could start taking advantage of that you haven't.
Awesome. Well, one additional kind of thing before we wrap up, everyone that did attend today will be receiving a kind of one-pager on Sage 100 Cloud here in the next week or so, so be on the lookout for that. But since there are no questions, Alan and Jim, if there's nothing else, then we will kind of close out for today, and thanks everyone for joining us.
Thanks.
Thank you.